When Dave Dombrowski speaks, I listen. Eagles, get some reinforcements on that run defense. All that and more. Oh, and my power rankings, my NFL power rankings that piss somebody off every single week. All that and more. Trending in the AM starts in 30 seconds.
Holding, gets around in front.
And Philadelphia has it.
And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. We're live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow on all social media platforms. Make sure you do us the favor. Hit that like, that comment, and that share, and the subscribe button over there on the DSM Media YouTube page. I greatly appreciate it. We got lots to talk about today. Dave Dombrowski spoke yesterday to the media, so we got to cover all of that. Bryce Harper about to have surgery on his UCL. We're going to dive into that. The Eagles got reinforcements on the defensive front. We're going to talk about that. My power rankings were released. We're going to talk about that. Lots on the agenda, but like I said, it's very important that you do me a favor and you share that out, share this show out, and get interactive. Whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, just get interactive, put your thoughts on the screen, but we appreciate the subscriptions on the DSM Media YouTube page. I am Phil Stifle. You can also follow me on Twitter at Beard and Knowledge. I'd greatly appreciate that follow as well. All right, so yesterday, it was actually, I didn't know initially. I'm like, after yesterday's show, which thank you to everybody that tuned in. We had some great viewership on YouTube yesterday for the show. I didn't know what today we were going to talk about. I knew my power rankings would be out, the most updated version for the NFL. So I knew we would talk about that, but I really had no idea what was going to be on the agenda today. But then, of course, as always, something pops up, and it's announced Dave Dombrowski is going to speak to the media. Excellent. And if you haven't listened to Dave Dombrowski's interview and press conference yet, I mean, we're going to cover it. We're going to go into a lot of the topics. I highly recommend going back and watching. It was about 35, 40 minutes long. But Dave Dombrowski is the complete opposite of Daryl Morey to me. They're both guys with a lot of hype, a lot of unnecessary hype on Daryl Morey, but Dave Dombrowski's actually gotten to the pinnacle. He's gotten to the World Series. He's won titles, opposed to Daryl Morey. But he also is pretty damn honest with what he's doing, what he's intending to do, what his thought process. He didn't say this is exactly who we want, but you really got a lot of really solid information from Dave Dombrowski. And it's really refreshing from an executive of a sports team to be pretty honest. Pretty honest in what their expectations are going into next year, what their expectations are this offseason. So I highly recommend going back and watching the press conference. The main point of the press conference, I think, scheduled was to announce that Bryce Harper will Wednesday be going under the knife to repair his injured UCL tear. And why is this significant? Obviously, he got hurt this year, missed a significant amount of time. We know that. But it's one of those injuries that he was able to play through for the most part. And as long as he didn't have to throw from the outfield, he could pretty much swing a bat. And maybe some rehab this offseason maybe would have healed it up enough where he could have given it a go in right field. But he's a hitter. He's not a pitcher. So we don't even know the details of this surgery just yet. This surgery could turn out to be a full Tommy John repair. It could be some lower end, slightly lesser, fixes in there. Rhys Hoskins in 2020 had a UCL injury on his non-throwing arm. They went in there and they did the surgery was just a slight repair, and he was back by spring training. So we won't know. Bryce Harper won't know. Dave Dombrowski won't know. Mrs. Harper won't know. Nobody's going to know the full extent of the surgery, the rehab, or anything. Oh, yeah. Bryce Harper tore his UCL early in the season and was DHing through it. That's why he wasn't playing right field for most of the season. A majority of his time missed this past year when he was on the injured list was when he got hit in the hand and broke his hand. He missed a few games here or there because of soreness in his elbow, but he played with a full UCL tear the entire season. Just goes to show how tough and a warrior he is. But we're not going to even know what the rehab and how long he's going to be out for into 2023 until Wednesday when they put him under the knife and the surgeon opens up his elbow and starts doing the work. Now, like I said, Rhys Hoskins had the minor version of the surgery done, and he was back for spring training in 2021. Now, Ohtani, stud, superstar, one of the greatest players in baseball right now, in 2018, he had the same thing. And he went under the knife in October, so they didn't make the playoffs, the Angels. He went to under the knife in early October, had the full-blown Tommy John version of the UCL repair. And he was back DHing in October, 7 months later, because you could get back to swinging a bat after Tommy John surgery a lot sooner than throwing a baseball. So if Ohtani was back then, we're having this surgery next week. That means by June 10th-ish, Bryce Harper could be back. So there's a window where he's back by spring training, and there's a window where he's back by June 15th. Hell, we could be conservative and say July 1st, which what's that? 70 games, 80 games, it's half the season that he'll miss. But the thing is, I said it from the beginning, I wanted him to have the full-blown surgery and just get it fixed. Because there was talk late in the season and immediately after the season, well, we're going to examine it, we're going to check it, see if we can just rehab it. I remember Cliff Lee had a UCL injury back when he was with the Phillies, and they tried injections into it to see if, I don't know what you put with those injections, but it speeds up the healing process. The word plasma seems to ring a bell. I don't know. I'm no doctor. I just pretend to sound smart when I'm talking about this stuff. But he tried, and it didn't work out, and then his career ended up coming to an end there. I wanted Bryce Harper to get this surgery done. Might as well just get it fixed now. We missed Harper for 2 months this year when he had his broken hand, and we were able to survive. We were able to still get to the playoffs when he got back and still get to the World Series. So losing Bryce Harper, while crucial, and he's a huge player, and he's the heart of this team, we could float water and tread water if necessary till he's back. And as long as you're around 500 when he gets back July 1st, and, conservatively speaking, you're good to go. So there's a lot to digest there with the Bryce Harper thing because we just don't know. We won't know till Wednesday. He's having the surgery next week. And hell, they probably won't even, they'll say after the surgery was a success. They might give you some slight details. Hey, we had to do full reconstruction or not. They're not even going to give us a timetable till 2, 3, 4. The surgery's Wednesday. It'll probably be after Thanksgiving week, which is next week. Having the surgery the day before Thanksgiving, now that it dawns on me, that's kind of odd that they're doing the surgery then and not a little sooner or a little bit later. We won't know till the following week, really, truly what a timetable for Bryce Harper's return really is. But what do they do? Say it's the full reconstruction. We learned a lot about what Dave Dombrowski's thinking this offseason throughout the whole entire 35, 40-minute interview. And, what they're thinking. And we're going to get into what he spoke. He spoke about the starting pitching. He spoke about shortstop, second base. He spoke about relief pitching. He didn't speak about outfielders at all, other than mentioning they have options at DH if Bryce Harper isn't there. We got to think that if his arm is fixed, once his arm is fixed, he's going to go back to being the right fielder immediately. And rightfully so. Bryce Harper is the right fielder. Nick Castellanos is not. So if Bryce Harper's going to miss the first half of this season, it doesn't seem like it's on the agenda for Dave Dombrowski to bring in another outfielder. Now, they might go bring in another utility outfielder, but or another one that's, right now, he basically said it's, Matt Vierling, it's Nick Maton, it's Kyle Schwarber, it's Nick Castellanos, it's Greg Marsh. It's Marsh. You've got those guys out there. That's basically your outfield to start the season. Marsh, Vierling, Maton, Castellanos, and Schwarber. And, I guess hypothetically speaking, if Harper's missing half the season, Castellanos will go to that DH role, which was what he was originally geared to go to when he was first signed here, I think the original plan was for him to be the majority of the DH with spot starts in the outfield. You could conceivably see next year, excuse me, an outfield of Veerling, Marsh, and Schwarber with Castellanos playing the DH. So will they go out and bring in another big name outfielder? Probably not. I mean, I know Tanaka or Tatanka or whatever his name is, the Japanese sensation that wants to come here and play with Bryce Harper, wants to come here. And if that's the case, that's great. Bring him in. You can put him in left or right. You can move around Schwarber, Marsh, and all those guys, and Castellanos. And hell, it actually gives them a reason to do it because Harper won't be ready for a little while. But then you'll have a real log jam when Harper does come back. So it doesn't make sense. He did not mention any of the Japanese stars that want to come over to Major League Baseball. And there's a couple pitchers as well that are going to get paid some pretty big money to come play Major League Baseball next year. He did not mention any of them in the press conference, which is interesting. I don't know if that was a tactical thing or not, but he did not mention them. He did mention some of the shortstops and some of the other pitchers that are available. Did not mention any of the Japanese players. So that's curious to me. But you could conceivably see Castellanos as that regular DH. And then based off of matchups, sure. Veerling can play right field. But if there's a matchup that they don't like Veerling in the lineup, you can move Castellanos there. Rhys Hoskins can DH. Alec Bohm can play first. Alec Bohm can DH. He mentioned Sosa's name a few times in the press conference. That obviously shows that they have some confidence and some interest in keeping Sosa around long term. Sosa can play third. You can have Bohm at first base occasionally. Bohm could DH. Schwarber could DH. Hell, you can have JT DH. It's something that's got to be discussed at some point this offseason is that they played JT Real Muto way too much this past year. And he was obviously, by the time the World Series came around, he was worn out. Outside that big home run in the World Series, he barely could make contact with a baseball. So they're not going to replace Bryce Harper with anything of significance this offseason. So be prepared for some Veerling to start the season, some Maton to start the season, whatever. He even mentioned Derek Hall's name as the DH potentially, which would leave Nick Castellanos in right field. So there are some options there internally. That's going to be what it is. But like I said, it's a big deal when you announce Bryce Harper's having a surgery. And I know a lot of people are talking on social media, well, why is he waiting so long? The World Series ended how long ago? Why hasn't he had the surgery yet? Because every day that goes by that he doesn't have it's one less day that he could be in the lineup. There's so much that goes into having a surgery. So many doctor's visits. Who knows if there's inflammation around anywhere where they're going to have surgery. You can't have any inflammation whatsoever. There's so much that goes into it. So I'm not worried. I mean, if they could have done the surgery sooner, I have 110% confidence they would have. So anybody that's bad, why isn't it? I see that all over social media and all over Twitter yesterday. Why is he waiting so long? God, there's so much that goes into having the surgery. So many second opinions and whatnot that have to be done. It is what it is. But it is the right surgery to have, in my opinion. It's the right thing to do. Because you just don't want that lingering thought, oh, they rehabbed it, it feels good, he goes out there and plays. And then he re-injures it and he's back to DHing or worst case has to have the surgery at the start of the season and misses all of the season, whatever it may. We were trying to stay away from that guy today. Dan Burke, I'm on the Sam Cassell train for sure. But sure, I mean, anybody could be better. But as I spoke about earlier this week on this show, that if it hasn't happened yet, Doc Rivers, in my opinion, will not be getting fired at all this year unless a massive, and when I say massive, I mean massive collapse happens, Blue City. Like, it's going to have to be one of those stretches where they lose like 10, 12 games in a row. 15 out of 16, go 2-20 in a stretch. It's going to take a collapse of that level for them to move on from Doc Rivers. And I've kind of sort of come to grips with that as a possibility because I said it before the season, and I've said it a few times during the season, Blue City, is that Joel Embiid and James Harden, I guarantee, were asked, do you want Doc back? And they signed off on him coming back this season. So if they signed off on it, Daryl Morey's going to let it ride, and Daryl Morey's going to, give them the opportunity to have a full season. So, and there's plenty of excuses written in. I don't buy the excuses, but there's excuses. James Harden's hurt. Joel Embiid was hurt to start the season, whatever. Plenty of excuses. So Doc Rivers isn't going anywhere. Unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. This team should be and could be so much better if they moved on from him. But he's not going anywhere. All right, back to the Phillies for a second here. So the Bryce Harper thing, it's the right move. The rest of the Dave Dombrowski interview and press conference, there were some other interesting things. Obviously, the number one topic this offseason for the Phillies is shortstop. And it's Trey Turner. And Dave Dombrowski didn't say we are going to pursue Trey Turner. But he said there's a lot of elite names. Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, Carlos Correa. Who's the other one? Oh, and Dansby Swanson. There's a lot of big name shortstops. And he was very specific in talking about the fact that they like Bryson Stott a lot. A lot. So he was asked specifically, I forget who asked the question, well, would be signing somebody like Trey Turner, make it that you don't bring Gene Segura back? And if you don't get one of those guys, would you bring Gene Segura back? And I think the writing was on the wall in his response that Gene Segura is gone. First, he said, if we don't get one of those guys, we're very confident in a Sosa Stott middle of the infield, which tells me, yeah, Turner. I mean, Turner's going to be linked to about 5-6 teams, only the big name teams, but obviously the teams like the Yankees or the Phillies on the East Coast, because he said that he wants to play East Coast baseball. So the odds of him staying in LA or on the West Coast are very slim. But there's a whole bunch of there's a lot of rumors that the Rangers are going to be spending a lot of big money this year. Who knows? Maybe he goes there. But the Phillies are going to be linked to him, and if they don't get him, they've made it pretty obvious that Xander Bogaerts is their 1B as well. So they're almost to an extent preparing the fan base if they miss out on Turner. Bogaerts is the next best option. Now Turner has the connection with Bryce Harper. I think they're best friends. They're like super, super close. So that obviously gives us a leg up over the Yankees. But somebody on the East Coast will get him. But my point more is that Dombrowski was trying to make it clear. Yeah, they're going after Turner. They want Turner. If not, they want Bogaerts. They want one of those guys at shortstop. But they're so confident in Stott that if they don't get him, they get Stott. Maybe they'll bring Segura back in, or more likely it'll be a Stott and a Sosa. I think that the mention of Sosa's name means that they want to keep him on the team, but you can't believe that they really want Sosa starting day in and day out. So they're going to get one of those shortstops, move Stott to second base, which he's very capable. He might actually be more capable at second base than he is at shortstop. And then they're going to bring Sosa back in that utility role to play short, second, third, whatever there is. I have not heard Aaron Judge to the Phillies once. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, obviously you would have to get rid of Rhys Hoskins. There'd be so much that would change if you bring Aaron Judge to the Phillies. I don't even know what an Aaron Judge contract is going to look like this offseason. He may be one of the last, if not the last, major free agent that signs this offseason, because I don't even know. Is Scott Boras' client? I don't even know, but whoever his agent is going to try to milk whoever for record level deals. I mean, at his age, at his production level, I mean, he's going to have to get a $350, $400 million contract, you would think. So, at least. So, that doesn't – it's just like when Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, signed. It was late February. Castellanos, Schwarber signed with the Phillies this year. It was after the lockout ended. Trey Turner's not going to sign anywhere this week or next week. It's going to be mid-December, if not January, early February when he signs. The big names and the big contracts normally take a long time to develop, which leaves the rumor mills for who's going to the Phillies, who's going to the Yankees, wherever, constantly leaves them, floating around and changing and fluctuating from day to day, week to week. But I think Dombrowski really spoke clearly that they are going to bring in somebody in that infield to improve the infield. I've talked about it already on shows that defenses are going to change drastically with the shift being banned. Having a great shortstop that's got range is going to become 10 times more crucial than it's ever before. Same thing with second base. How teams handle that, it's going to be really, really important. Dombrowski, hinted on that. Having shortstops and second basemen that have more range is going to be much more important now. You can't have a second baseman you can't put your worst defender at second base because he can't cover much ground anymore. You can't put him in right field. Yeah, I mean, San Francisco's always brings in big names as well. So Aaron Judge, I still think he stays in New York, but, it'll be interesting to see how that plays. Maybe I'm just not down with the details of the rumor mills in New York as much as Philly. So shortstop is going to be addressed this offseason. And basically from what we've read, Gene Segura, I suggested, spending that money on pitching and bringing Gene Segura back because he's a good player. But, the writing's on the wall. Gene Segura is pretty much done in Phillies. Sorry. All right. So the other things he talked about, and I think the pitching with the Phillies is a critical thing that he talked about. Because I know the Phillies fan base is desperate. I want to use the word desperate for Andrew Painter, McAble, Griff McGreary. They're young stud pitchers. They get called up now. Andrew Painter's 19 years old, and everybody wants him in the starting rotation from day one. These guys might just not be ready. Griff McGreary may be the closest. But Dave Dombrowski brought the pitching stuff up, and obviously Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, and Ranger Suarez are slotted into your rotation. If you want to call them the 1-2-3, 1-2-4, 2-3-4, whatever you want to call them, they're in the rotation next year. No doubt about it. Then he clearly said that he is going to target a starting pitcher. One, though. Just one. I have not watched this yet. I will get to it, though, if it's worth my time. He will target one starting pitcher this offseason. Whether it's a big name like a Carlos Rodon or a stopgap, he will bring somebody in. And he was very clear. You got to think about it. And this is not saying that these guys can't come back. But between Noah Syndergaard, Kyle Gibson, and Zach Eflin, that was 54, 55 starts this year that we've lost. So you're going to have to bring somebody in. He did not say that Zach Eflin is gone. He did not mention bringing Gibson or Noah Syndergaard back. But he did say that Zach Eflin is still on the radar for this team. Yeah, well, I was saying it before most Phillies fans. I didn't want Joe Girardi to start the season in Philly this year. Joe Girardi's a bad coach. He's I don't even think he'll get another job. I don't even think he wanted to coach. I'm so moved on from Joe Girardi. So beyond that. I don't even want to mention his name on this show anymore. Because that's just another reason for me to say I told you so. Not you, Blue City, but other people. Because I was saying it from day. I've had the same conversation about Doc Rivers and Joe Girardi. They're the exact same person. Both need to go. One's gone now. One needs to go. Dave Dombrowski did say Zach Eflin is definitely on the radar to come back. They will kick the tires there in discussions there. But what he specifically said, which I want to make sure people understand, he said he's going to leave one spot open entering training camp, entering spring training. And it's going to be Bailey Falter, Christopher Sanchez, Andrew Painter, Mick Abel, and Griff McGreary. All five of them competing for that last rotation spot. And let's be honest, and he mentioned it, Bailey Falter is probably in the lead for that last spot to start the season. Let's not kick around the tires here at all. Bailey Falter had an excellent second half of the season with zero expectations. He pitched really well. I know he got lit up in the World Series or the championship game. His one random start, but he hadn't pitched in 2.5, 3 weeks. So I don't want to totally, blame him for that. But he pitched well enough to earn at least the lead going into spring training for that fifth spot. But Dave Dombrowski was pretty open and honest about saying, look, I'm going to bring all five guys, and whoever wins it, wins it. But let's just be honest with, like I said before, Painter's 19 years old. You don't want him pitching 200 innings at 19 years old, 150 innings. He's going to be on an innings count. You let him have a light spring training, a light first few months. And if Bailey Falter isn't it and he's still pitching well in the minors, then you bring him up in June or July. You're conservative with him. He is going to be the starting pitcher in this rotation. Two of those three guys, McGreary, Painter, and Abel, two of them will probably be starters in our rotation for years to come. There's no need to rush 19 and 20-year-old kids just yet when you still got Wheeler, Nola, and Ranger Suarez, you're going to go out and get, somebody else to pitch. You don't need to totally, waste those guys just yet. So I just want people to realize that's what I've been saying. And basically, Dave Dombrowski, he didn't say they don't have a chance, but he basically did. If you really listen to what he said, that it's probably more likely Bailey Falter or Christopher Sanchez. And unless Andrew Painter or Mick Abel come out and do something extremely amazing in spring training, kind of like when Scott Kingery came out and they had no choice but to bring him up with the big club, which turned out to be a mistake. He wasn't really ready. And we ruined his entire career, Scott Kingery, by bringing him up too soon. 19-year-old kids, they're not even fully developed yet, guys, as pitchers and as athletes. There's patience there. The patience is the key. It's as I just said, there's literally no doubt in my mind, unless something amazing happens, that it's Bailey Falter. It really is. I don't even want to hear Christopher Sanchez's name. Like, I know he's an okay guy, and he could be a AAA guy that gets called up on a doubleheader, or if there's an injury for a week or two, you have to skip somebody's start. Whatever, that's fine. But it's Bailey Falter, and I think he's earned. I think he's. I almost wish Dave Dombrowski would have just put the kibosh on Painter and Abel right from the get-go and said, our fifth starter is going to be Bailey Falter. He earned that right. It's his to lose. And we're going to add a fourth starter. I almost wish Dave Dombrowski would have said that, because that would have, said what we already know. Exactly. I don't know if you missed it a second ago, Joe, or Jake, but I said, Scott Kingery, we rushed him up because we wanted him up here so badly. We ruined him. Pitchers get ruined. He's 19. He's not fully developed. No need to waste him. Now, if you want to bring him up because there's an injury or somebody's failing in July, even if you started him day one, even if he proves he's ready and you bring him up day one, he's 19 years old. He's not going to pitch more than 120, 150 innings. Last year, he had 103, 104 innings. They're not going to let a 19-year-old kid that's the future of this franchise rotation go from 104 innings to 180 innings like that. It's just not going to happen. So leaving the door open, yeah, it's great. Competition is great. But it's just going to make the fans keep wanting him. Exactly. And well, see, now you don't watch enough of the morning show to know. I would keep the door closed on Zach Eflin. I don't like Zach Eflin, especially as a starter. Zach Eflin, to me, if you haven't heard me say it before, is basically, he's a different pitcher than the name I'm going to name, but the results are the same. He is no different than Zach Eflin. Or Zach Eflin is no different than Vince Velasquez. Except, for some reason, Vinny V got all the criticism, and Zach Eflin got none. Zach Eflin is inconsistent. He'll give you 2 starts with great outings, and then he'll give you 2 starts with getting rocked. He is extremely injury prone. I want nothing to do with Zach Eflin as a starting pitcher. Now, if you want to convince Zach Eflin to come out of the bullpen, he showed me something. If you want to tell me Zach Eflin's okay as your 6th to 7th inning guy, okay. If you want to say that Zach Eflin is going to be in the bullpen, and then in July Andrew Painter's going to come up, but we're only going to pitch him 4 innings a game, and Zach Eflin's going to be your 5th and 6th inning, okay. But I want nothing to do with Zach Eflin as a starter again. It's just going to be more of the same. He'll get hurt. He'll be inconsistent. And everybody will say it's okay. Eventually he'll be. Do you realize it's been over 7 years since Zach Eflin debuted on the Philadelphia Phillies? There's no more developing of Zach Eflin. Zach Eflin is who he is. So I want nothing to do with Zach Eflin. But if he's willing to commit to the pen, I mean, let's be honest. Our bullpen, we lost a lot of guys. Corey Knievel's gone. Robertson's technically gone. Eflin's gone. Brad Hand is a free agent. There's a lot of guys that are free agents. So we do have, I mean, he mentioned in his interview or press conference yesterday, he mentioned 3 names. Sir Anthony Dominguez, Jose Alvarado, and Connor Brogdon. Basically, that's all we've got in the bullpen at this point. So if you want to consider Zach Eflin, he has not officially been quoted as saying this, but he's basically hinting around that he wants to be a starter. And if he's not going to start, if he's not going to go to be happy in the pen. I don't even want to. If he said I want to start, but I'll come out of the pen. I don't want that. I want him to be excited to come out of the pen if we're going to bring him in for that role too. So I'm off on Zach Eflin, and that brings that last point that he did bring up the bullpen. So the Phillies have a lot of money. I think it's like $70 or $80 million that came off the books this year, and they have a lot of money to spend. But you got to understand, probably $30 million of that's going to go to Trey Turner a year. You got to get a starter, and I don't know who that starter is going to be, but they're going to spend $20 million on a starter. So that's $50 million there. So you're going to have about $20 or $30 million to spend to revamp that bullpen. So there's going to be a lot of attention spent on the bullpen, in my opinion. You don't want to burn out Alvarado. You don't want to burn out Dominguez again. A lot of energy will be spent there. A lot of time and focus will be spent there. Connor Brogdon impressed me in the playoffs. He really seemed to like a switch kind of flipped on him at a moment in the playoffs, and I don't even remember which moment it was, but he seemed like a different pitcher. So there's that. There's more things that he mentioned, and guys, he mentioned Rhys Hoskins and how you don't replace, just like I said, it's almost like he listened to Training the AM. You just don't replace his offensive production. I know Dave Dombrowski said, I see all the criticism from the fan base because of his defensive errors. You can't just replace his offense. So Rhys Hoskins will be back most likely, barring a drastic trade. But one question he was asked about, and we're talking about pitchers here, and it's a story to monitor, and it brings up another topic that I want to bring up with the Phillies here before we wrap Phillies talk up and get on to Eagles, is that Aaron Nola, the most obvious option picked up by a team, I think it was like $16 million to bring him back for one more year. Obvious. Now, there is going to be negotiations this offseason about extending Aaron Nola. No doubt about it. He is going to deserve an extension. You're not going to want to go into next year with that hanging over the head. They're going to try to lock him up long term. And Dave Dombrowski said it. We would like Aaron Nola to be a part of this organization for a very long time. And the reason why I bring it up is if you saw, Sandy Alcantara won the NL Cy Young yesterday, and rightfully so. He was the best regular season pitcher in baseball this year. At least in the National League. Verlander won it in the American League. Great, fine. But I'm looking at the numbers here, and I don't know if anybody even realizes it, because I don't even think people were paying attention to it. But Aaron Nola finished 4th in Cy Young voting this year. He did not get – Sandy Alcantara was a unanimous – I think it's only the second time ever that a unanimous Cy Young winner was selected in the National League. I know it says it somewhere in this article I got up, but I don't really want to he was the first unanimous winner, so not the second, but the first unanimous winner since Kershaw in 2014. It was Alcantara, Fried, Urias, that was 1, 2, 3, then Aaron Nola. Ahead of Zach Gallen, ahead of the guy that everybody wants the Phillies to get, Carlos Rodon, who was 6th. And what I think people don't realize is how great of a season Aaron Nola had. Do you realize that in the last 5 years, he's finished in the top 4 in the Cy Young voting twice? We might bash Aaron Nola for struggles in September, which weren't as bad this year. We might be disappointed right now because he kind of came up small in the World Series. But day in and day out, turning in and turn out of the rotation, Aaron Nola was damn good this year. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I remember hearing at the end of the season in the playoffs at some point, whether it was the John Smoltz team or the Alex Rodriguez team, depending on what series this stat was brought up in, bringing up his strikeouts, innings to walks. And he was the first pitcher in baseball to have as few walks as he had with as many strikeouts as he had. The first. That's not by accident. So even though I have criticized Aaron Nola many of times, it's up to me to even be the first one to say it was a damn good season from Aaron Nola. And I don't want Aaron Nola going anywhere. I don't want to give him 5 years, $30 million a year or anything like that. But I want to make sure that Dave Dombrowski spends a lot of time focusing in on making sure he's locked up long term here, because you can't replace that. And we talk about all the time how we have no homegrown, talent on this team. Well, he's a homegrown guy. You want to keep him. He's a voice in that locker room that people respect. You don't want him going anywhere. So the Aaron Nola conversation is something that I want to have just because I bet you if you asked 10 people or 100 Phillies fans, did Aaron Nola finish in the top 5 of Cy Young this year? 90 out of 100 wouldn't even know or say probably not because they just got the World Series performance on their mind. But he did. Real quick, gotta take a quick pause in the action. Today's show brought to you by Gents Barber Lounge. Check out one of their 2 great locations, Fishtown and Old City, and book your appointment today. They own the craft and it shows, rated the #1 barbershop in Yelp in the Philadelphia area. Multiple award-winning barbers and able to handle any style cut, adult or kid. Check out some of their great work right here. All right, and we are back here, trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. And as always, live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. Again, make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe on all of the social media platforms, especially the YouTube page. We would greatly, greatly appreciate it as we continue to build this brand and as I continue to build this morning show. If you're watching this even on replay, and yesterday we only had like 5 or 6 people watch live, but I ended up having over 60 views later on replay. If you're watching on replay, hit that like button, subscribe button, drop your comments because I check throughout the day and I will respond to all your comments, even if they're on replay. Because I do. I really do appreciate it. And you'll see at Beard and Knowledge, even on YouTube, responding to your comments. I greatly appreciate that. All right. So we covered some Phillies talk there. And we're going to continue talking Phillies as the weeks go on this offseason, as more news breaks, as if there's a slow day in sports and, I want to talk more Phillies, I'll bring it up. There's lots to cover with the Phillies in a very long offseason. But I want to talk a little Eagles now. I got to get to my NFL power rankings entering this week. So let's get started with that. Let's talk Eagles. Yesterday, they put officially Dallas Goedert on IR. Tupelodu, Marlon Tupelodu, however you say his name, got moved to IR. And the Eagles brought in, hold on, I got to close some tabs. I got way too many tabs open on my screen. Don't need any of that shit slowing stuff down. There we go. All right. So, the Eagles yesterday decided to go out and get some defensive line help. We know the Eagles are massively struggling against stopping the run. And we know they've got Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones, and A.J. Dillon, and Derrick Henry, King Henry, the next 3 weeks. Bing, bang, boom. So they needed help. They did. So what the Eagles did, they went out and got 2-time Pro Bowl defensive tackle Linval Joseph. He's a former second-round pick of the Giants, played with the Vikings. If people remember that Chargers game last year where we got beat and we couldn't get off the field on defense, he led the team in tackles that game. Now, he hasn't played since the end of last season. And, man, this is a guy with girth. He's a big man. Man, if he's even remotely a shell of what he's capable of doing, imagine when Jordan Davis gets back and we have 2 350-plus pound guys in the middle, clogging up space, taking up space. It's gonna be fun. So they bring him in. Now I want to talk about 2 points here with this. So first off, my man Shane Hath, Painted Lines, Bleeding Green Nation, does so much great stat analysis. He played nose tackle last year 47% of the time. And the Chargers' run defense wasn't great. They were 30th rushing yards per game, 31st in yards per carry, 30 in rush EPA. I don't even know what that is. Some kind of efficiency probably. 32nd in rush SR. Don't know. I don't know the analytic, things with it. But they weren't a great run-stopping team. Doesn't mean he wasn't a good player, though. So there's a couple things here. First off, he hasn't played all year. He's a large man. We don't know what kind of shape he's in. He'll be out on the field on Sunday against the Colts, I'm sure, but how many snaps he can play, I don't know. But to think he's going to come in, even if he's in a perfect shape, and just make us a top 5 run defense like that, I think that's a little over the top because, I mean, if he was that good, he's 34 years old, he would have been signed to a team already. Now, does he have something left in the tank and he can make, you know, some form of a contribution? Absolutely. But to think he's going to solve every problem, that's pushing it a little bit. Now, maybe we don't need 70 of 80 snaps of Fletcher Cox next week. Maybe he can play 60 snaps, 55, and Linville Joseph can play 20 or 25. That will help. Will it solve the problem? I doubt it. So yesterday, I shared on my Twitter page, and make sure you go over to my Twitter page, at Beard and Knowledge. I shared a video. It was of the football show on ESPN with Dan Orlovsky, Mina Kunis, Ryan Clark, Marcus Spears. And if you're not watching their show, they do some really great analysis, theories, topics. It's not hot topic stuff most of the time. They do some really strong discussions. There's about a 9-minute video, and I shared it on my Twitter page. And they were talking about run defense. And I think this is part of the problem. The Eagles, for as bad as they are run stopping right now, they're middle of the road ranking wise. Because a lot of teams are struggling to stop the football, running the football. And it's because that there's been a kind of a trend in football over the last 5-10 years, back in the day, and they bring these topics up. What I'm basically paraphrasing their conversation here. There's a lot of a swing to, you look at who's the best defensive tackle in football right now. Aaron Donald, 280 pounds. 20 years ago, defensive tackles were 350, 360 pounds, and they took up space. A lot of the successful running games right now are going in the middle. It's not like they're running jet sweeps and stuff like that. There's a lot of success being had, and they go over the numbers about how much of an increase per carry of running the ball up the middle has happened lately in the last few years. And it's because you don't see those 350-pound guys anymore. You see athletes as defensive tackles. And what that does is it creates more space, more room for these running backs to run through. And it made me think that that's really interesting, that teams haven't tried to develop or bring in guys that create or clog up space. And you do that with Jordan Davis, and we were doing a very good job, not perfect, but a good job of stopping the run. He goes down, and all of a sudden, these big gaps are opening up. Defensive tackles, nose tackles, used to not worry about stats. As long as your team stopped the run, your defensive tackles were playing well. Now Javon Hargrave, one of our defensive tackles, leads our team in sacks. He's got 7 sacks. And there used to be defensive tackles back in the day that wouldn't have 7 sacks in 2 years, 3 years. So it's this trend that teams have had in organizations on what they want their defensive tackles and nose tackles to be, has created an overall picture that you can run the football in the middle and get yardage and be successful. Run for 4, third down, short pass. And it's a trend that football's going towards. That running the ball is becoming more important. I don't know if I want to say the age of the running back or anything like that, but you look at how many successful running backs are in football right now. There's a lot more than you would think. You'd think this is a passing league, and everyone talks about it's a quarterback-driven league, and it is. So them going out and getting Linville Joseph to pair with Jordan Davis for the playoff and stretch run, kind of, I don't expect them to have huge stats night in and night out. But if they can clog up and take up space, what it does is it creates less room for the running backs to run. It creates more one-on-one opportunities for your edge rushers. That just goes to show how much, the defensive tackle position has changed. Just the defensive line in general. You don't have defensive tackles and defensive ends. You just have defensive tackles and edge rushers. They've even changed the name of the position. So I think what Howie Roseman has done by bringing in Jordan Davis, I think it was a precursor to him seeing that this change was coming, that running backs and run through the tackles or in between the tackles was becoming more of a trend. He goes out and gets a girthy guy that's going to take up space. He sees him go down. He sees his team struggle. Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox cannot stop those middle runs. And he goes out and gets another girthy guy. I love that word girth, just so you know. I love when a guy, he's got big girth. I think it's hilarious. I'm a girthy guy. So, maybe not to Linville Joseph's size or Jordan Davis' size, but I'm a girthy guy. I think it's a good thing that Howie has seen this trend and gone out. There were probably other names that he could have brought in, but this is a girthy guy that can take up space. That's going to need two guys. You're going to have your center and your guard blocking him, which is going to free up somebody else. Maybe Robert Quinn's actually able to make a play. Maybe. I think it's a smart move. It's one of those moves. And I saw an article from my man Ed Kratz, great guy, great articles always from him. And I kind of was reading it, and it's exactly how I felt in his article. He just says things more eloquently than I do. Basically, it's a win-win move. If he comes in and is effective, our run defense gets better. Jordan Davis gets healthy. All of a sudden, we're back to having one of the best defensive lines in football. If it doesn't work out, it was a 34-year-old guy that was sitting on. It's not like they went out and traded a major draft pick for a guy and he just failed. It was a swing in the dark. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, okay. Jordan Davis is still coming back, and you're there. But anything to keep Fletcher Cox off the field a little bit more. I saw somebody post on Twitter, maybe it was on my timeline, would you bring Fletcher Cox back next year? Man, talk about the eye roll I did there when I saw that for the first time. It's crazy. Fletcher Cox is burned. He's done. I would love to see Jordan Davis come back, have his stamina up, and come playoff time, you see Fletcher Cox on the field less than Jordan Davis. That would be a dream come true for me. Because Jordan Davis has got nothing, or Fletcher Cox has got nothing left in the tank. Coffee's gotten cold now. It's kind of not as good. So I think it's a good move. It's a smart move. It's a win-win move. There's no risk. There's a lot of potential reward. And he's older, but he hasn't played yet this year. So if his stamina is up there, and Nick Sirianni said he's gonna play on Sunday, it can't hurt. That's the thing. The numbers just can't get any worse than they were. Well, I guess they could because we're going up against Jonathan Taylor, not Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. Now, if Jonathan Taylor comes out on Sunday and rushes for 200 yards straight up the middle, all right, maybe it didn't work out. But it's in my opinion, it's a smart win-win move, and one that should not concern anybody. All right, so I love doing my weekly power rankings. And my man KC, part of Team DSM, he does great graphics for us all the time for whatever we need. He's our graphics go-to guy. So he's the one that puts together my I send him my rankings, and he puts together this really kick-ass graphic. I put it on social media, and everybody freaks out. This is my power rankings this week. Entering Week 11, even after the loss, I left the Philadelphia Eagles at number 1 in my power rankings. And my man, where's the response to me? I was having a conversation about Washington, and my man Brett Goldstein, he's one of my followers on Twitter. I've interacted with him a lot. He's like, how I could say the Eagles are the best team in football still when they have a weakness and that they can't stop the running game. Well, Brett, to address it, again, every team in the NFL at this point has weaknesses. There is no perfect. I'm just trying to see which screen should be the best here. There is no perfect team. Every team below the Eagles here has weaknesses. The Eagles have one major weakness, and it's stopping the run game. And they've still been able to go 8-1 with that glaring weakness. With teams knowing they can't stop the run, they're still 8-1. There's no way I would bump the Eagles after that loss out of the top spot. Now, I left the Vikings at number 2 this week, even though they beat the Cowboys, or whoever they beat this past week. Who they beat? The Bills. Tight game. The Vikings, to me, are the team that scares me now the most for the Eagles to make a deep playoff run. The Vikings kind of have that 2017 Eagles underdog mentality. No one's giving them any hype. No one's giving them any love. And they just keep going out and winning football games. They do. So I'm concerned about Minnesota going forward. I really am. I think they're a talented team. As long as they don't have to play on Sunday night or Monday Night Football, they're going to keep winning football games. I think they have their division more likely locked up than the Eagles do at this point. So The Vikings are a team that might end up at some point being number 1 in these power rankings some week going forward. Kansas City Chiefs, number 3 on the list. Chiefs are still the Chiefs. They're great. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, they're just a constant. They just are. Buffalo, I dropped down to 4. Now, I could have, and I thought about dropping Buffalo down even further. They're losing a lot of games lately. This week's going to be a tough one as well, because there's going to be like 30 inches of snow up there in Buffalo this weekend. It's not going to be an easy Cleveland Browns. It's going to be a run game. It's going to be Chubbs against Josh Allen running the football. So Buffalo's in a sticky spot right now. I left the Cowboys at 5. Probably should not have. I just know whether I put the Cowboys too high or too low, it always just offends somebody. So whatever. The Ravens 6, they didn't play. I left them where they are. The Dolphins at 7. I should have probably put the Dolphins at 5 and dropped the Cowboys to 7. That probably was my one mistake this week, in my opinion. The 49ers are still a really good team. Christian McCaffrey, they're trying to figure that out there as that defense gets healthy. Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill back. Tennessee's a very good. They're going to win their division. So Tennessee at 9. And yes, Blue Coat, your football Giants. One win away from taking. They're not going to get first place. Trust me. But I do have them at 10th in my power rankings. Possibly too low, but possibly spot on as well. Look, power rankings are a fluid thing. Power rankings are opinions. I absolutely love how offended. I put my power rankings on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on TikTok. And man, the amount of response. I could just make content around power rankings and I would have impressions through the roof. Because somebody is always offended when I put my power rankings up. It doesn't matter what I do. Somebody is pissed off somewhere. But they're just opinions. But to go back to the Brett Goldstein comment on my Twitter page from earlier, there's a lot of flaws in football this year. We see it with these average records. There are very few teams with good record. Obviously the Eagles and the Vikings are the only one-loss team in football right now. You've got, let me pull up the NFL standings right now, overall, league-wide. You've got 2 2-loss teams in the Giants and the Chiefs. So you got the Eagles, Vikings, Chiefs, Giants, all with 2 or 1 loss. Then you got a bunch of teams with 3 losses. But you got so many teams. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 4-loss teams. 1, 2, 3, 3 5-loss teams. 1, 2, 8, 6. So 4 to 6 losses are basically 60% of the league, are between 4 and 6 losses. There's so much mediocrity in football this year. I am shocked more than anybody that the Giants are where they are right now. I said it before the season. The Giants were going to impress a lot of people this year. Brian Daboll was the guy that before Nick Sirianni, I didn't even know who Nick Sirianni's name was when he got hired. But during that interview process for the next Eagles head coach, Brian Daboll was my number 1 choice. I want him. I saw what he did in Buffalo. If you notice, there's been a slight stall in Buffalo since he's left. They're still really good. But are they as effective as they were when he was their offensive coordinator? I don't know. I just said that they weren't going to take it to this level. I think I had 7 or 8 wins predicted for the Giants this year. I have to go back and check. But I just didn't think they would win more than that because of Daniel Jones, whatever you want to call him. I thought that was going to be the thing that holds them back the most. I said Saquon Barkley was going to have a good year. I said they were going to be a more disciplined team. They're already flipping the culture. Any of the bad eggs, they've been gone. Got rid of Tony. They're changing that culture. The Giants are a team that scares me next year even more because that culture is just going to continue to change. And they're impressing massively. But they have holes too. They still have Daniel Jones as their quarterback. So until this, I need to see the entire season to even remotely consider saying that Daniel Jones has made improvement. I need to see the big picture before I can make a little comment like that. But the Giants it just goes to show, though, how flawed this NFL is this year. That, no offense to the Giants, but the Giants, who were as bad as they were for the last few years, can just change their coach and all of a sudden win 7 games. Be 7-2. But yet there's so many other teams that are 5-4, 4-5. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So when Brett says that the Eagles are so flawed, I can't have them as the best team in football, they have one flaw, stopping the run. It's a big flaw. But a lot of teams are flawed at stopping the run. And it's basically the same exact thing what I talked about with the Dan Orlovsky video. In fact, I think I'm going to share that video with Brett after this show. You got to see the whole team in the big picture. And as a team, big picture wise, the Eagles are still the best team in football, hands down, no doubt about it. There's just no question in my opinion on it. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up Trending in the AM right there for the day. DSM Media, again, like I said, like, share, comment, subscribe. Even if you're watching on replay, I would greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate that. Share it out with all your friends. Tell everybody to come over, hit the subscribe button and the follow button. I greatly, greatly appreciate that. We'll be back tomorrow previewing Eagles, Colts, predictions, keys to the games, all that good stuff. Anything else that happens. Sixers get the Sixers 4 days off, stop tomorrow. They play tomorrow night. We'll talk about that game as well. Jason will be joining me, Jason Voorhees. So we'll be talking about that as well. So everybody have a great Thursday. Enjoy it. We are 1 day closer to the weekend, people. We're 1 day closer to Eagles football. It feels like it's been ages since we've seen a Sunday football game. But everybody have a great day. I just want to see this because I saw it was a Josh Allen comment. Yeah, it's such a great comment right there. I love it. I love it. I was thinking that before the season started. But everybody have a great day. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to everybody in the comment sections. Jake, Blue City, everybody else. Have a great Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow morning right here, 8:30 a.m. on Trending in the AM.